Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to another Burlingame. It's a small-town podcast sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. This is Mark Lucchese, also known as Mark at the Mic, and my guest today is longtime Burlingame resident Don Donoghue, owner and creative director of Donoughe Design, located at 630 North San Mateo Drive in San Mateo. Don has been on the cutting edge of design, marketing, and technology solutions since the advent of desktop publishing in the late 80s. He had the unique opportunity to be in the right place at the right time, from working with Steve Jobs at Next Computer to working on the redesign of United Airlines and having designed and created the beautiful Welcome to Burlingame mosaic mural located on Hatch Lane in Burlingame. He also created and designed the logo for the Burlingame Historical Society Museum located at the Burlingame Train Depot. Don is married to Beth Concoby and is the father of two boys, Dylan and Logan. He also has an identical twin brother, Ron, who is a very accomplished landscape artist. And now my conversation with Don Donoghue. Don, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Mark. Thanks for inviting me.
How'd the intro go? Did I make any mistakes there? Because sometimes I do.
Well, actually, it was almost perfect.
Okay.
I'll explain. We just before COVID, I moved out of the Galligan building and built a really neat studio behind my house. You have to stop over and see it, but that's the world headquarters of Donoughe Design now.
I love it, man. You have a very short walk to work, right?
I do.
Isn't that great? So
anyway, it's we're in the corner of...
okay, one little correction there, and we did it. He keeps the show organic, as they say, right?
Okay, yeah.
Okay. Typically, Don, I open up the show with a couple of fun facts, but if it's okay with you, I'd like to move those fun facts to the end of the show because you have a very unique story to tell about growing up a little bit with your family, and you had about 10 siblings, right?
Well, there were 10 children in the family.
And your father had sort of a unique job, and without me getting into it, why don't you tell the rest of the story?
Yeah, this could last a long time, so I'll try to shorten it a bit.
Yeah, you can give us the Reader Digest version. Okay.
So my mom was raised in a Catholic orphanage, and she was taken in onto a farm as a young teenager to be a farmhand.
This is in Pennsylvania.
This is in a very rural part of Pennsylvania, Cambria County. So it's between Altoona and Johnstown. Johnstown is famous for the Johnstown flood.
Okay. And how many miles from Pittsburgh, just so I know?
It's about an hour and a half drive.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So if you know, Pennsylvania State College is in the geographic center of the state. We're kind of between State College, where Penn State is, and Pittsburgh. So it's called the Main Line area, or as the local newspaper says, we're high atop the Allegheny Mountains.
Wow. Okay. Great.
So so my mom was she was working on this farm. My dad, who was, let's just say, somewhat uneducated, he had to drop out of school early to work, as many people did back then. So I think he only went to like 5th grade. But so he met my mom. They quickly got married and started having kids, not in that order.
Were they like from the same town or something when you
they
say
had,
that?
They had relatives. Yeah. They had people they knew in common. My dad just happened to visit what she called the farm. And so it was kind of interesting because when they first got married, they were very poor. He actually bought an old schoolhouse, tore it down, and used that lumber to build our house, which that's pretty impressive for an 18-year-old
very
guy,
impressive,
17, 18-year-old guy.
Yeah.
And then he started. He was kind of one of those guys just wanted to do things himself. So he was trapping muskrats, which we don't have muskrats around here in Burlingame.
That's sort of a rodent? Is that what you call it?
It is. It's like a small. It's like a small version of a beaver, except they don't have a big tail.
Okay, so he was trapping those. So the fur, I guess, fur.
Muskrat fur used to be a big deal on women's collars, and so he would trap mink as well. So we grew up with a lot of traps in what we called the gas cellar downstairs.
No kidding.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So how old was he then? About
he was
18
probably
or 19?
Yeah, and then he was also buying like small woodlot areas and chopping down the trees and selling what were called props to the coal mine to hold up the roof in the coal mines.
That's So you mentioned that you built your studio, going back to your headquarters of Don Donoughe Designs, right? You built your studio in the back of the house, right, or backyard, I guess. Is that where you got your skills though from your dad?
No, actually, it's kind of a prefab thing. I did a little carpentry with my dad's brother after I graduated from college, but I wouldn't consider myself a union carpenter.
Okay, but anyway, that's all right. So that's interesting though, a muskrat hunter or...
Yeah, he had a bunch of traps down there.
Wow, all right. So you're originally from Pennsylvania, okay? And how old were you when you... Well, how did you get to Burlingame, California, and how old were you when you got here?
So I met... if you don't mind, I'll start with the story of meeting my wife.
I like it.
Okay, so I was... after I graduated from IUP, Indiana University of Pennsylvania, which was not too far from where Ron and I grew up. I was a elementary art teacher in Pittsburgh for a short time, and then I got a job at Gimbel's department store. So think Miracle on 42nd Street.
You mean working retail?
I was in visual merchandising. I was one of the few straight guys.
Changing the windows out? Is that what you mean by that?
One of the few straight guys working in the windows.
One of the straight guys.
We had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So I was there for about five years. But while I was working there, we were invited to a discotheque, and so I actually met my wife in heaven. And
that's the name of the discotheque?
That was the name of the discotheque, and I met her, and and eventually tagged along when she decided to move back to California.
So she was not a native of Pennsylvania, right? She was a native of California?
Primarily.
But working in Pennsylvania or something?
Yeah,
took a job?
So she went to school at Santa Barbara, then Davis, then University of Michigan, ended up in Pittsburgh at PPG, and kind of, like a lot of people, they miss California.
So you were Disco Don at heaven? Is that the deal? Oh, man, that's funny. All right, so you meet Beth. She wants to come back to California, and you say, great, I'm going to meet you back in California, or what?
She said she was kind of taken back, and I said, well, I'd kind of like to move to California with you. She's like, well, I kind of think you need to do a test run first just to make sure.
Right.
So I didn't have a lot of money at the time, so it was... So as luck would have it, I was listening to the public radio station trying to figure out what I was going to do, and they had a fundraiser. So if you put in $20 in this drawing, if you donated $20, you had a chance to win an airline ticket.
Okay, really?
Yeah. So.
And you hit?
I hit the jackpot.
Was it one way or a round trip?
Well, it was round trip.
Yeah.
So it was on long gone Eastern Airlines, and so I got a free airline ticket and came out and spent a week in the Bay Area. Loved it, and I guess I passed the test. So. And
so she showed you around, and you guys did some dinners and whatever you guys did,
we had,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
How old were you?
So I was about 25 at the time.
Yeah. Okay, so you hit it off, and then what happened? Did you have to go back to Pennsylvania and give notice or something?
Yeah, I did, and then I started sending out a lot of resumes.
So you came out here jobless in a sense.
I did, but when I was here for that week, I had interviewed with all the major department stores like I. Magnin, Macy's, Gump's. Almost all the major, so I had a lot of interviews, and I thought my prospects were good for a job. So
you wanted to stay in visual merchandising in retail sector, correct?
You felt comfortable? Yes and no. I knew that business, but I really like doing more of the graphics behind the scenes, like working in the shop. So I didn't really want to be in a store being what's called a trimmer.
And give me the approximate year this was.
Yeah, so this was in 85.
So this is before tech.
Oh, yeah.
Before what you do today.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Give me some more of that journey.
So went, it was a pretty good visit. Went back to Pennsylvania and started formulating a plan to come out here. So my twin brother and I loaded up the truck and we moved to Beverly.
Moved to where?
Well, the reason I mentioned that is my buddies, Ron and some friends, threw a party and they sang the Beverly Hillbilly song.
Oh. But you didn't move to Beverly down to Southern California. No. You came up here.
Right.
Oh, that's good. I love it, man.
so it was a fun going away party. And so Ron and I loaded up my car and drove cross country.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
It was fun.
So you arrive here in the Bay Area. Whereabouts?
Well, Beth was working for Cal OSHA in Berkeley at the time, so she had an apartment, so I was able to kind of had a place to land, and so we lived near Lake Merritt in Oakland for a while. And I wasn't real psyched about the working for the big department store, so I found a job working in an art store in Oakland.
An art store, just retail art store, selling supplies.
Right.
You mean?
Yep.
Okay. Keep going. This is very interesting to see where this all goes.
Oh, okay.
Man.
Well, just one side note on the art store. So not long after I started there, it turns out that the money was disappearing in the safe at night.
Oh, terrific.
So it turns out that the manager was stealing money from the safe to fuel his cocaine habit.
Oh, great. Yeah.
So next thing I knew, I was managing the art store.
Really? So he's out, you're in.
I'm out, he's out, I'm in. So I'm managing an art store, which, I'm not really I knew visual merchandising, but I wasn't really.
You had to grasp all the other things that go along with managing.
It would have been helpful to have you to tutor me how to run a store.
You're a good man, Don. Yeah. How long did that last?
So I was there about 4 or 5 years, and then Beth got a job in the fledgling biotech field, and so we decided she couldn't drive across the bridge.
So that would be in San Francisco?
South San Francisco.
Yeah, the peninsula.
So then we decided to move over to Potrero Hill.
Okay, and then you left your art store managing job, and then
and then I went back to school and studied graphic design.
Where did you go to school?
California College of Arts and Crafts.
Okay, so you're going to school. She's working, right?
Correct.
Okay, so she's kind of like the money person at that time, or what?
She's always been a good money person.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, all right. So you graduate from California.
I'm just going to get
take a little sip. Go right ahead.
So continue with your thought there.
Okay, so she turned out to be the money person while you're going to the college,
right?
To California Academy of Arts.
California. So it's called CCA now. It used to be CCAC, right. California College of Arts and Crafts.
Okay.
Turns out it was right down the street from where we lived in Potrero Hill, so I was able to just walk down the street and pursue another degree.
Yeah. How long did that take?
That took about 1.5 years, so I was able to transfer a bunch of credits. But the neat thing about that is I had this opportunity to study with, at the time there was this group of Michaels. All their names started with Michael, so there was like 4 or 5 Michaels in San Francisco, and most of them were teaching at the school. So it was kind of like just a perfect time for me to go to school there and learn from these kind of world famous designers.
Yeah. So you graduate now from the academy or the art school.
Right.
What happens?
So during my portfolio review, I got noticed by a couple of guys that were working for Steve Jobs at Next Computer.
Steve Jobs. The Steve Jobs.
Right.
Apple, like the computer that's in front of me here.
Right, yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know if you recall.
At Next Computer.
Yeah,
Next.
So he had left, kind of got kicked out of Apple.
Right, they were going through that rough time.
Yeah, and he ended up starting up his own company.
Yeah, and that was over in Redwood Shores?
Yes.
Okay, so you get this job with Next.
That's correct.
How long were you there?
I did 2 stints there, and it was fun because we were working with a bunch of the engineers. I was technically an illustrator, so I was working with the engineers and doing illustrations demonstrating how the software worked, mostly.
Right. And was this sort of an introduction then to the computer world for you, or what?
It was. I took, the Macintosh had just come around, so I had one instructor, Dorothy Remington at CCAC, that kind of was early adopter of the Mac, and so I took a class from her and then ended up working with her off and on for maybe a year, and that was just tremendous experience and helped me land the job at Next.
Yeah. How long were you there at Next?
I was there probably off and on a couple of years.
Okay, and then what's next?
Well, so we were having kids, and early in my career, and then I got this job at a company called CKS. So it was three guys that were kind of just doing really great things.
And they were here on the peninsula or back in the city?
Well, one guy had worked for they all had kind of Apple connections one way or another. So they were starting up a new studio where they were working on big brand identity stuff. And one of the clients was Steve, and I knew how to work on the Next computer, so if you're a designer, there's just a very few amount of people could work on that computer at that time. So that kind of opened the door for me.
Yeah. Quick sidebar. Did you ever meet Steve Jobs in person?
Well, so I've got a few stories there, Mark. Steve was a unique individual. I don't know if you've read any of the biographies.
I read a couple of them, yeah.
Yeah, so I was part of a team, and we were working on various marketing and technical documentation. And so somehow somebody's idea was to bring Steve in for a portfolio review, which was probably not a good idea.
Okay, why not?
Well, Steve was not in a particularly good mood that day, and he came in and just marched around the table 2 or 3 times, and there's about 12 of us sitting there, dead silence. And finally he says, Eddie, it was my boss at the time, he said, Eddie, this is all effing S-H-I-T.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
And he said that several times.
Yeah. So he had sort of a volatile temper. Is that correct?
He
could fly off at
He liked to kind of push people off their mark. Mm-hmm. And so, it's dead silence.
Yeah.
He's cussing and telling us, how awful of designers we are as a group.
Yeah.
But then he zeroes in on one piece and says, I really like this.
Yeah.
Who did this? And then the whole demeanor changes, and he becomes, Steve the nice guy.
Right.
So later, when I wasn't working with him, do you want me to tell this story too?
I do, yeah.
So later, my son Dylan was, I'd say, about 5 or 6, and this is after I kind of started up my own company. There was an open house in San Francisco for the San Francisco School of Circus Arts, flying trapeze kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's incredible that they were inviting people to come and do such a dangerous thing for next to nothing for free.
Right.
Well, anyway, we heard about this because one of my employees at the time was involved. So we went up there, and Beth and I were in line with Dylan. I said, "Oh my God, there's Steve Jobs with his son," and she said, "That is him." And so we actually walked over. I walked over to Steve with Dylan, and Dylan started talking to his son Reed, and we kind of just chatted for like 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah, just like two dads.
And exactly. And he was very down to earth, very friendly. Automatically, knew who I was talking about when I said I'm working with Tom. Used to sit outside my office with Keith, and he said, "Yeah, I'm so upset about what's happening over at Apple. I just dumped." I forget what he said. Hundreds of thousands of shares.
Oh yeah.
So,
boy.
And I remember reading after he died, his wife, Lauren, had inherited, all the money, all the shares and everything, that she would have been like the 3rd wealthiest person in the world had Steve not dumped all those shares.
Yeah, because it all came back and some.
And then some, yeah. But, I talked to Steve the day after he sold all those shares.
Yeah.
But anyway, he was an interesting guy, and I feel very blessed that I was able to kind of rub shoulders with him, even just a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. What a thrill.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was fun.
He's definitely a superstar, okay?
Yeah.
That's putting it bluntly,
yeah,
I think,
yeah.
right beyond that. But all right, you mentioned, I'm going to fast forward just a little bit.
Okay.
You mentioned that you had some businesses. You started to get in business for yourself, your own company, right?
Yeah.
And
go ahead.
Mouse House?
Mouse House. Yeah. So I joined a Burlingame guy who was a designer, and he was just kind of, so I just always had a kind of vision of having my own business. So a guy asked me to join him, and so I did, and then we joined another sales guy that I used to work with at CKS joined us. So there were 3 of us, and we just started building a business doing early website design.
So, and this was just coming into its own, I guess, right?
Yeah. The internet has just really started to. I mean, it was very difficult working with the internet, but so it was mostly what we called interactive at the time.
Was this in the 90s then?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, early 90s.
So, My House. right?
Mouse House.
I'm sorry, Mouse House.
Yeah.
And you're talking about the little mouse, right?
Yeah. So it was a play on words. It was a German spelling for Mouse House.
Right. That's great. Okay. You hung there for a while, right?
So we built the company to about 25 people. So we started landing some big accounts, Intel, Sprint, doing lots of CD-ROM type of work and big websites. And then we joined with another guy from San Francisco, Malcolm Guthrie. So Mark and I joined with this a guy who had a company in this city. We had shared an employee, and so the three of us grew the business to be one of the Inc. 500 fastest growing companies in the United States 2 years in a row.
Really? So you were putting in a lot of hours building these websites and things and designs and all that?
Everything was stressful, Mark.
Yeah.
Yeah, hiring, doing the jobs, just trying to, we had...
Pay people.
Yeah. Well, we moved to Baldwin and South San Mateo Drive. We had most of the first floor there. Our rent was $35,000 a month at that time, so it was a big nut.
I'm sorry, how much was it?
$35,000
at that time.
Yes.
In the 90s.
Yes.
Wow.
This is mid to late 90s.
That is a lot of cash, man, back then.
Yeah, it was. We had 45, 50 people. We had video equipment. We had lots of Macs. We had furniture. You name it. It was a lot of paper clips.
I'll say, man. So how long did that go on for?
We had the business for about, I'd say 12, 15 years, and eventually moved to San Francisco. One partner left. It was me and Malcolm, and then eventually the three of us kind of split up and shut down that business, and I decided to kind of keep doing it on my own.
All right, so 2005, you launched your company, Donoughe Design?
Right.
Is that correct?
Yeah. All
right. It's in San Mateo.
Right.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what Donoughe Design is and what you do?
Oh, okay. So, when we first started going, it was, I was just working with existing clients. So it was mostly...
Because you had made a name for yourself?
Yeah. So I had the relationships. Mm-hmm. A lot of those relationships were with higher education. So I was working before we shut down Mouse House. We had done work for Stanford, for Mills, Santa Clara University. So we had landed some pretty big jobs, and so I had an into that vertical, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
So that I was able to parlay those relationships with a software company in Southern California. And they started recommending me to bid on jobs. So I worked on. We were also working on other nonprofit high tech stuff, but the college jobs were really like the big money makers and the big projects that were like University of Arkansas, lots of small colleges all over the United States.
Really? So these people knew about you in San Mateo, California? Is that right?
Well, it's there. Because we became experts with a certain kind of software that was tailored to higher education. So
when you opened your Donoughe Design in San Mateo, did you have employees at that time, or were you just a one-man band for a while, or what?
Yeah, so it's just, I've never had full-time employees, so I've just had contractors.
Yeah.
So think of, a contractor that's going to build your house. He's going to job out all those different specialties.
Right, so you're not paying benefits or anything like that?
Correct. So I've always just hired contractors.
Yeah. Okay. And you're still doing that today?
It's pretty much the same thing. Yeah. So we're still working with higher ed, not as much. Things have kind of slowed down over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
I think COVID kind of slowed things down. I'm not really looking for the big projects like I was earlier.
Yeah.
Honestly, a lot of my clients are getting aged out.
Right.
Sorry to say, but but we've had great success with building websites for nonprofits and higher ed.
I was going to ask this particular question later, but I'll ask it now. You're building a website, right? Do you continue to sort of update it if it needs to updates or anything like that? Is that part of the contract, or is that something that you bill later on? How does that work?
I'm pretty flexible on that. Like, we work with Sustainable San Mateo County, and they reach out to us intermittently to do some things they need help with, and sometimes they can manage to do it themselves. So it really depends on the client. I like to teach people how to fish so they don't have to buy fish from me.
Yeah, I got it.
And so I've never had to act like I'm the only guy in the world that can do this stuff.
Yeah.
If you want to do it yourself, that's fine.
Yeah. Beth, your wife, does she work with you? Is she involved in any of this?
No, she was a science person.
Science.
When she went to Santa Barbara and Davis, and studied toxicology, and eventually got a master's in public health from University of Michigan.
Yeah, you mentioned she worked for OSHA. Is she still working with OSHA?
She worked for Cal OSHA when she first moved to California.
Right. And then she got into the...
Then she got into the biotech.
Right. And is that where she is today?
She is still... She's worked with the same company. She celebrated her 39 years of employment with the same company last week.
35?
39.
39. Terrific. Good for her.
It's hard to believe biotech's been around that long, but she was kind of an early...
That would be like Genentech when we say...
So, Genentech was a product of Genentech and Corning Glass.
Okay.
So they came together, and their main product was enzymes, think Tide.
Okay,
enzymes.
Don, we're going to move along because now you're beginning to lose me.
Believe me, I'm glad you're not going to ask me any more technical questions about what she does.
As soon as you start mentioning things like enzymes, I'm out of here. So, okay. All right, so you're talking to a complete, and this is full disclosure, as they say, a complete web dummy here, all right? So I've got a problem, and I'm going to present it to you as a customer. I'm going to come and see you because you're highly recommended, but I'm a small player in the big world, right? But I want a website for my Market the Mic podcast, all right? So I come and see you, and what happens next?
Well, I try to really understand the problem that you're trying to solve, because I'm a problem solver. As a designer, You're solving problems for people. And so I'm trying to figure out who your audience is, try to find out if you have a logo, find out if you have any photographs, any content, you need any technical functionality on your website, any forms, if you have to bring data into a database. So even though I'm not a technical person, I know enough to know how to spec the job.
When we're sitting down and we're talking about this chat, am I not being charged for this first billing, or how does that work?
You're going to be charged. It's going to be quite expensive.
Yeah, right off the bat?
No, I'm kidding. No. I don't charge for a consultation. But I have had people come in, kind of pick my brain for an hour and say thanks, and then go find somebody else. But that's fine. Most of the work that I get is referral. Yeah, and it's people that have referred me to somebody else. So they're typically not going out. Like doing the higher ed stuff, I would compete against 10 other agencies. Yeah,
and then so I'm going to say, well, I've got a logo, but you're probably going to look at the logo and say, well, it's a good logo, Mark, but I could probably do a little bit of this with it.
I do that very often because I really like working on logo, which brand identity stuff.
Right.
So with my love for typography and design and logo development, I love to extend the brand and manifest itself into the website in colors, fonts, look and feel, other considerations as well.
And then you're going to say to me, well, what's your target audience? Well, it's probably anybody. The majority is probably over 50, maybe 60, because we're all members of the Historical Society. It's old Burlingame. And
so we're going to use large type.
We're going to use large type, yes. Especially for me. Okay, then you're going to ask for pictures. What do you mean by pictures?
Well, a lot of times, depending on the job, we'll hire a photographer. Sometimes I'll actually shoot some things myself. I know enough to be dangerous with the camera, and so. But sometimes I'll hire a writer. Sometimes if it's a big site, I'll hire somebody that works on the structure of the site, which is called an information architect.
Yeah.
So it just depends on the size and what you need.
And then you start to develop it.
I will first write a very detailed proposal that outlines exactly what I'm going to do.
And how long, and you would give me like a start and finish?
Yeah.
So if we started this weekend, you could have it done by the end of summer, something like that?
Right, yeah. It's typically a couple months.
And you're going to put the invoice total at the bottom saying it's going to cost you this, right?
Yeah, so I have different, this portion is this much, so I kind of break it down by all the different parts of the job.
Yeah, and then would I have to have money up front to begin the project?
Most of my jobs, I do a third is beginning, third in the middle, and third when the site goes live.
Okay, and then a small fry like myself wants to keep the website updated. You're going to show me how to do that? If I want to add some pictures or if I want to write a little blog or something?
Yeah, so most of the time you could update the content yourself unless it requires like Photoshop stuff. That gets a little bit more complicated.
Which I could come to you for that?
Yeah.
Is there going to be a charge, or because I was such a good customer and my neighbor?
Yeah, plus you gave me a tree from your yard.
Right.
We'll get into that later.
Yeah, we will.
But yeah, no, if it's something simple, I just do it. But if it's like an hour or 2 hour thing,
there's going to be a cost. Yeah. Absolutely. And this is just for general people too,
right.
and in general, finding out about what you do, Okay. So I think right now, why don't we just take a little break?
Sounds
we'll be right
good.
back. Huh?
Okay. Thanks, Mark.
All right, Don, I think we're back on the air. I hope we are anyway. I see the little red button going, so we must be recording.
Looks like it.
I have a question for you about we're going to wrap up web design here and websites. Okay, so I'm just wondering, with all these services out there that are now, self-publishing, I guess, or self-websiting, whatever they call it. There's Canva, there's Six and Squarespace, and I'm sure there's more. Wix, not Six. Wix, that's a typo.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thanks for the correction.
Squarespace. It seems like there's another one out there every.
So you're well aware of them.
Oh yeah.
All right. So why should folks like myself come to you, and why wouldn't we just do it on our own?
Well, a lot of people do try to do their own website, and then they end up coming to me later. But
to fix it,
most of the time it's start from scratch. I'm actually working with somebody that tried to do that recently. But so even though there are tools out there that enable you to plug and play and grab this image and that image, it's kind of like when desktop publishing first came out. Everyone said, all the graphic designers are going to go by the way of the dodo bird because everybody can use their Macintosh and design their own newsletter now.
Right.
But just because you have 100 fonts and you can use every color in the rainbow doesn't really make you a designer. Mm-hmm. So as a designer, I'm gonna see the big picture. I'm gonna give you marketing expertise and work with high quality photographs. I'm going to make sure the copy is written correctly so it's optimized for search engines so that Google can read the metadata information. So the way I like to build a site that has good organic search, so you don't have to pay Google for those expensive AdWords. So there's advantage to working with a pro who knows how to build the site correctly, and there's a lot of it's complicated. There's a lot. It's the intersection of a lot of different disciplines that make it difficult for somebody that doesn't understand the process.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, especially if you're a working guy and you're trying to launch your website, it's a lot of time consuming. I mean, which you mentioned, a lot of fonts and a lot of colors. When I just look at simple stuff, I get lost in the weeds, man. So I would definitely need a guy like yourself.
And I'd love to help you with your site. But yeah, it's fun to help businesses and people realize their. I see myself as a partner in their success. So that's what makes it fun. And I've become an expert in so many different. I mean, not that I know everything about all these different businesses, but it is like a deep dive into everyone's, whether it's a nonprofit or it's a higher education or casino. We did a bunch of casinos back in the day, so it was kind of fun.
You said you're an expert, and you are, okay? Because when we were off air there, I was looking at my notes, and you taught at San Francisco State for a while.
I did teach at San Francisco State. I taught in the multimedia studies department for about a year, and that was fun because I was trying to teach them graphic design for multimedia, and I actually hired a few of my students.
So that was for a year?
Yeah.
How did you get that gig?
It was like a continuing education program, so I would go up after work and teach in the classroom, and it was a good learning experience because I actually, as you know, you looked at my resume, I have an art education degree. So.
Yes, you do, and you went back to your old alma mater. Was it last year?
Yes.
And taught there for a while, or
so
what?
Yeah, exactly.
Walk me through that one.
So last fall, I was invited to teach at Indiana University of Pennsylvania, which is where Ron and I went to school after high school. It's a mid-sized university, and not so far from where we grew up. And we had a great experience there, so I'm still very much tied into this school.
Yeah.
And so the dean of the I got a position as an associate professor, and I was able to teach a hybrid class of design. So I went back for a week, actually met with the students, and then used a curriculum to teach about 20 students online.
Like a Zoom thing?
It was a Zoom thing. We do breakout rooms. I'd show them videos. I did tutorials. I showed them how to use mostly Adobe Illustrator. So there was an existing curriculum, but I kind of tweaked it so that I could put my own slant on things.
Okay, you have to fill me in on this because I'm not quite sure. So you're teaching, you got a web design company, you're skiing, you're running, you're snowboarding, you're cycling. How do you manage all this time, man?
I like to stay busy, and I'm.
So when you went back to school, you kind of put your business on hold.
Yeah, I was just there for a week, so we were just.
But you still had to do Zoom classes and prepare.
Well, yeah, I have. So it's just. It's not that hard, really. It sounds like I'm busy, but
But you're sculpting, and we're going to talk about the sculpting in a minute.
I have a lot of interest, Mark.
I know you do.
I'll keep you here for 3 hours.
Okay, so why don't we move to your front yard for a minute? Okay, which is just down the street from me, and in the Washington School neighborhood, which I never knew you lived there, although I could see you almost daily at Molly Stone's. So I'm walking to school with my. I'm walking to school with my grandson, and we're with some other moms and stuff. And have you seen this house up here? Look at all the sculptures, right? I go, whoa. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's like 4 sculptures out there. There's a panther, a toad, a hare, and a tortoise.
And a tortoise.
Yeah.
Tortoise is Myrtle and Ural. It's mother and daughter.
Yeah, but these things are huge.
The tortoise is in... Mother tortoise is very large.
Yeah, but
about 300 some pounds.
The funny thing is I never knew that was your home until one day I'm walking by and there you are at the home. I go, "This is your place, man. You're the guy." So it blew my mind. And then they told me that we have a ginkgo tree in front of our home that's been there forever. It's big and thick. We had it taken down by the Parks Department. And you picked it up, or you had it delivered to your house. Yeah, you're going to sculpt that sucker.
I had talked to the guys when they were trimming my trees. I think his name was Tony, and I said, "Hey, do you have an extra log you can give me?" He said, "Well, you want a log?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going to make a snail sculpture, and I want the snail climbing up over a log." And I'll be darned if he didn't come back and knock on my door 2 months later and said, "Hey, we've got your log." Although, Mark, I got to tell you, he told me it was 13 inches. It turned out to be like 2 feet in diameter.
And very heavy, right?
I had to run a giant chainsaw to take it down to size.
Yeah, that's great. So my tree lives on in your yard.
It's going to be part of a sculpture.
That is terrific. And for those folks that would like to see some very short clips on YouTube, they're like about 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes. They're terrific. How does somebody find your channel real quick on YouTube so they can see these videos?
Well, the problem with that is no one can figure out how to spell my last name.
Yeah, I know that. So I have trouble too.
But yeah, so if you go to YouTube and you Google Don Donoghue, Donoughe.
Yeah,
and you'll find the sculptures.
They're great. They're just like 1.5 minutes and stuff like that.
Yeah, I try to have fun with the process so people can get a laugh and understand the process of what I'm doing.
Was Beth holding the camera or did you have it on a tripod?
She films me. My next door neighbor filmed me. Sometimes the kids, if they're around, they'll film me.
Let's talk about the making of the sculpting of these articles. Okay, they're amazing.
Well, I'm just going to refer to my notes to make sure I get it right because it's the neat thing about the. Can I start where I learned about the material?
You tell me anything you like. This is your show.
Well, what happened is we were in New Zealand with the boys, and it happened to be my birthday. It was 2019, and they were like, "Well, Dad, what do you want to do for your birthday?" And I saw this little pamphlet that there was a tour of Weta Workshop, and I'm not sure if you've ever heard of Weta Workshop.
I haven't.
So think of Industrial Light and Magic. All the special effects stuff for movies.
Okay.
And so this is it's basically it's a team of creative artisans, and they make like Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, Black Panther. They make all these both digital and real world sets. So they're doing the computer stuff, but they're also artisans. They're making sculptures for the helmets and swords and everything. So they offer tours. So we went over there and all of a sudden the boys were like, wow, this stuff's cool. And then, so they took us through and showed us how they make all the swords and everything. And just as we were finishing up, there was a guy who looked like that crazy professor on the Back to the Future movie.
Right.
He had that white jacket on. I swear he looked just like that guy. And he was making sculptures. He was using aluminum foil, and then he was talking about this other material that he was going to put over the aluminum foil, and he had a little sign there. It's called Paltaya.
What's that called again?
It's P-A-L, 2 words, P-A-L, and then the second word is T-I-Y-A. So it's kind of a new material.
Paltaya.
Yeah. So it's basically, it's like it's kind of like based in cement, but it has other materials into it, and you just mix it with water.
And obviously, you can purchase it here in the States.
You can. It actually comes from Portland.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay.
So anyway, the boys, I got excited about this, and the boys, I said, hey, I should make something. And so when I came back, they bought me a bag of the material, and I made this kind of crazy little face, this head, and as a practice thing. And then I thought, yeah, I've kind of, there's lots of YouTube videos.
Right.
And it just started growing from there. I just started working bigger, and I made the hair, and people loved it, and it was funny.
Your sculptures got big. I mean, they look terrific. But people need to see them and walk by that corner house on Arundel and I'm sorry, Arundel and Bayswater, a corner home. Okay.
They're kind of, I would say they're kind of hidden into the
you have a very
natural
lush
landscape.
Yeah, you have a very
so
lush
they're
garden.
Not like out in front. You kind of have to look for them.
You have to look for them.
They're snuggled in.
They're like an animal that, like the raccoons at nighttime, right? Whatever. So Don, I'm just wondering. I mean, I've seen these things many times now. How heavy are they? Or do they range like over a couple 100 pounds or what?
Definitely. In fact, the last one I did has a 1/4-inch steel armature. Armature is basically the frame that the sculpture is built on top of. So I figure that thing is in excess of 300 pounds.
And are you building these in the backyard?
Let's not bring that up because my wife's not too happy about that.
Okay.
But it would be worse if I moved it into the garage. But
yeah.
She says, she keeps saying these things keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, which they do. But it's just the material. It kind of it's not real fussy. It's not like a bronze sculpture you're going to make out of wax first. It's kind of it works better at scale, let's say.
So how do you get them from the backyard to the front yard? I mean, you just don't push them along the sidewalk.
So I had my son Dylan and 3 of his large friends put this thing. I measured it so it'd get through the gate. I thought I might have to get a winch and lift it over the fence, but it fit through the gate with about 1 inch on each side. So it was.
You lucked out there.
It was kind of fun with the boys moving it into place.
Yeah. Did they have it on rollers or what? Or they just
some kind of giant cart.
Terrific.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a fun process.
Have you been sculpting all your life?
Well, when I was in college, Ron and I spent a summer in Lucca, Italy. I know you're. What part of it? Well, are you Lucchese?
Lucchese from Lucca.
You're Lucchese from Lucca. Well, this is amazing because Ron and I lived in Lucca for a summer. We lived in Palazzo Guinigi, which is a giant old building with trees on top. So we were there with an Italian painter from Pittsburgh who was just a wonderful guy, John Del Monte, who is still alive, which is incredible. But it was good fortune for us to spend a summer in Italy, and we were there with a few opera singers, but primarily artists, sculptors and painters. And we would spend 3 days a week in a studio carving marble. We actually got our marble from Carrara, where the marble from the David came. We would go up to Pietrasanta and see all the sculptors that summer there from all over the world.
Yeah,
it was just. An aside is, artists in Italy seem to be very much respected. People just love it. I would sit on the beach and sketch, and people come up and buy my sketches. And so we would.
And these sketches, would you just be scenery type sketches?
Whatever, just about anything.
Wow.
But I worked on a sculpture all summer long, and it was out of marble, and I called it Il Fluto, the wave, and it was an abstract piece. It was kind of cool looking, and we had a show at the end of the summer, and this guy that bought it apparently owned a Picasso.
No kidding. So you and Picasso, huh? In this guy's house?
I don't know why I'm not in the Louvre, but anyway,
it's coming. Right.
But anyway, it was neat because we had a great summer, and it was monumental for both me and Ron, where you kind of see yourself as I could become an artist. It's
right.
Kinda, and Italy's the place to do it.
And we'll get to your brother in a minute because he's done very well as an artist.
He has.
Yes. All right. Besides your front yard sculptures, are you working on any of the projects right now?
I'm, So back to the tree that used to be in your front yard. I'm going to create a giant snail that's climbing up over this log, and it's going to have its head up, and it's going to be looking out from. It's where the panther was. The panther got moved to the backyard, so to make room for the snail.
Terrific.
So I'm using some artificial intelligence tools with the Adobe Creative Suite to work on some images of the snail. So it's the stuff is changing.
And there
daily.
he goes, folks, losing me again with the artificial intelligence and the Adobe. What suite or what is that? A hotel with a room or something? Okay. Are you familiar with the fellow that does the tree sculptures in Washington Park?
I have not met him, but
you're familiar with the work, right?
I love them. I love the fact that there was a tree there, and now it's this delightful sculpture that's really. I'm enamored with it.
Great work. I've never seen him do it, and he's around someplace, but it's amazing work.
I love that he's doing that.
Yeah. We're going to move to one of your most major projects, and it's right here in Burlingame, and it's going to be there forever. It's the Greetings from Burlingame mosaic mural, right?
Right.
That happens to be on Hatch Lane. And when I said Hatch Lane to a couple of people, they said to me, where's that? So I thought that would be a great trivia question, right? Hatch Lane in Burlingame, folks. So basically, it's just off of Burlingame Avenue towards the end of Burlingame Ave if you're heading east, right?
Right. Yeah, just kind of.
And so and I wish we had pictures right now to show folks, but they're very simple to find on YouTube. Just put Greetings from Burlingame mural and boom, up it comes. It's gorgeous. Took my daughter-in-law there yesterday.
Oh, you did? Oh, that's
She'd never been there.
Oh, that's great.
And she was blown away with our youngest grandson. Anyway, walk me through that project. When did that project start? What year?
So that's... I'm trying to remember what year that started. Let's see. Better look at my notes. So what happened was... So Jennifer and Russ came over to me, and they were like...
Jennifer and Russ are from the Historical Society, right?
Yeah, mm-hmm. Jennifer Pfaff and Russ Cohen. Mm-hmm. And so they came over and said, well, Don, we're thinking about doing a mural on the side of this new building, and apparently Ryan, who was... I guess the main dude was willing to pay for it. So, but they had this interesting idea, number one, to make it out of ceramic tile, and number two, to put it on the side of the back of the building, and Russ came up with this incredible idea, which was, let's use the idea of an antique postcard where there's images in the letter forms. So I think it was around. I started in the fall or spring of 2017, and so we were just worked through lots of sketches and ideas, and then I quickly started working on the computer. And Russ gave me this. He had some old wrapping paper that had just a plethora of old postcard designs, which were from all over the United States. Really cool stuff, and that was really the impetus for the creative direction. So for me, it was kind of a matter of finding the right typography and the right images, which Jennifer and Russ were really great with helping me acquire these.
Just for our folks that are listening out there and haven't seen this mural, tell everybody how big it is.
So it's comprised of 3,195 ceramic tiles.
3,195.
And it's 15 feet high by 47 feet wide.
Yeah, so a basketball hoop is 10 feet high, so it's 5 feet higher than a basketball
hoop. And it was really something to see the guys installing it, because the cool thing about this mural is each tile is numbered, and so people have pulled up too far and broken some of the tiles.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the maintenance.
So I'm not sure why it wasn't higher off the ground, but I don't know what happened there. But anyway, so each tile can be reordered and replaced. But so it was a very fun project and just a delight to work with the Historical Society.
So it started in 2017?
Yeah.
And how long did that last? How long did the project go on for?
the design process was like 4 or 5 months, but then we had to do all these tests with the colors on the tiles because, like the blue in the sky, I wanted a nice gradation of the sky because there's an airplane flying in the sky above the letter forms, and it was just hard to get that gradation because there's only so much you can do when you're moving which is CMYK or RGB color schema to a ceramic, firing a ceramic tile. So it was a bit of a challenge technically, but yeah. So we had to spend a lot of time sending tiles back and forth and looking at colors and kind of huddling over at Jennifer's house, looking at how things were working.
During installation, were you there quite a bit just to see how
it was? I couldn't keep myself away from that. I was up there constantly. And the interesting thing is such a large flat surface, and the main artist, and I don't know what his skill set was. I guess he's a tile guy, but he's trying to get that perfectly flat, so all the tiles were perfectly flat on that giant wall. That was a challenge.
Yeah,
it was a fun project, and it was really neat to see it come to fruition.
Did your brother have something to do with the letter I?
He did. Yeah. So the interesting thing, I incorporated one of Ron's paintings. We'll talk about Ron in a minute, but he had spent some time out here. He was represented at the studio shop for a while. They were handling his work. And
oh, really?
Yeah. So he had done some paintings of eucalyptus trees here in Burlingame, and so I thought, well, I needed something kind of skinny for the letter I.
Yeah.
And tall, thin and tall. And so we scanned that and put that letter form.
And that was eucalyptus trees, right? Yeah. Fabulous. Yeah, that was great. So altogether, start to finish, how long did it take?
I'm going to say it was about a year for the whole project.
And who footed the bill on this?
Ryan did. I'm spacing on his last name, but he owns the building.
Really?
Yeah.
Terrific.
Yeah, and Jennifer and Russ kind of, I think, he was familiar with the work that you as a historical society are doing, and he wanted to do something for the community.
That's terrific. Wow. Okay. We've talked about the great Ron Donoughe, your brother, and the work. Well, we haven't talked about his work.
Yeah, so
fill us in.
Yeah, so Ron is my identical twin brother, and it's just been, I feel very blessed to be a twin. But God was good to us, and
absolutely. He's a Instagram favorite.
Well, he's worked really hard to become a landscape painter, and as you can imagine, that's a hard thing to do. So he's been painting full time for years and years and years, and he's really gotten to be somewhat of a celebrity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's published like 6 or 7 books. I've brought a couple with me today, but he works on these big projects like this one's Brownsville to Braddock. So he documented this, where all the steel mills used to be on the Monongahela River, and and this one was kind of funded by University.
Is he still living in Pennsylvania?
He lives in Pittsburgh, and and he owns our family house where we grew up, which is an hour and a half from Pittsburgh. So he kind of has the country thing, the city thing, and he's just a really cool studio.
Yeah, is he a family guy?
Yeah, so he's got 2 kids too, and his son was just in Time magazine last week.
Really?
Yeah, his son is. He went to Harvard, Yale, Harvard University of Swarthmore, then Harvard, then University of Chicago, and now he's doing all this stuff on all the hazards that we're facing with AI and biohazards.
Amazing.
And the Defense Department had him come down and speak to him, and so there's an article in Time magazine. He's just, he's a smart kid.
Just a dumb question, if you don't mind, because I have a lot of dumb questions, but landscape painting. I'm sitting in my front yard and I'm painting, I'm doing a sketch of the person's house across the street just because I like how that looks. Is that landscape painting?
Technically, he calls himself a plein air painting, which is French for in the plein air.
Okay.
So it's when paint was able to be put into tubes. It was a big deal. Otherwise, they're making paint from pigments and mixing them in their studio.
Right.
So once you're able to put it in a little tube and go out, like the Impressionists started doing. That's when it was called plein air painting. Yeah. Ron has basically taught himself to become an outstanding plein air painter. So he goes out in the middle of the winter and will do painting. He'll paint on location year round.
Wow. So you mentioned that when you were a youngster, you would sit on the beach and maybe do a sketch or two. Was he doing the same kind of things?
Yeah, we used to draw each other, and we just could always draw from an early age. So
did you feel he was more talented than you at that time, or what?
Well, he won't like this, but my mother said I was more talented than him.
You hear that, Ron?
No, but we were always just, we studied art together, and it was kind of what drove us.
We have time for, it's going to be quick, but we have time for a couple of goofball fun facts, if you don't mind.
I'm ready.
Right? Okay. So you ride motorcycles, but you take motorcycles on long trips.
I do,
right?
yeah.
You have, a BMW something.
GS 1200 adventure bike.
But you go on these bro trips, right, where you take your buddies but they're not just up to South City. You go cross country, or more or less. So you have a chance to tell me one or two quick stories.
Carl Martin and I have been doing a lot of bike trips together, and he was involved with a larger group from Bay Area guys, and we were doing some big trips about every 3 or 4 years, and then Carl and I did one where we 4 or 5 years ago where we rode to Albuquerque and rode pretty much off-road all the way to Montana. So we were crisscrossing the Continental Divide, which was quite dangerous. One guy broke his leg on the trip.
Wow.
And because you're going through water and through sand, but it was quite an experience, and it was a lot of fun. Then last spring, this time I did a solo trip to see my oldest sister up in northern Canada. So that was
a solo trip.
That was by myself.
That's pretty challenging.
It was a lot of hours on the bike and a lot of time for rumination. Let's put it that way.
And Beth was cool with you just taking a long trip to Canada, or what?
She wasn't.
No pushback.
Let's just say she was not real thrilled about that. The fact that I was doing it without my boyfriend.
Yeah, man. Okay.
That was a long one.
All right, I got time for you to mention a few shout-outs to family, friends. Oh, I know. Wait a minute. If anybody wants to get a hold of you, right? They just go to...
Yeah, so my website is DonoghueDesign.com, DONOUGHE design.com. And I'm on Instagram too. So not as much as my brother. I don't have 100,000
He's
followers.
Got a crazy following, man.
Yeah, he does. But or stop by and check out the sculpture. Stop in and say hi. Beth is always working in the yard.
That would be the corner of Rundle and Bayswater in Burlingame, folks. Yeah. Okay. Shout out to family, friends, and colleagues.
Oh, I just want to make sure I thank Melinda Lai, who's my kind of partner in crime, and we've worked together for 30 years, and she's just...
she runs the shop when you're out snowboarding, biking, blah, blah, blah.
She is really... And she's not only very technical, she's a super project manager, and a close friend. So she's... I just want to thank her for all the years that she's helped me. And,
Great.
Mention the boys have been very supportive and get a kick out of all the stuff that I do, and it's fun hanging out with those guys.
Yeah, and then there was the breadwinner while you were going to college.
Oh my goodness, she's been my rock.
Yeah, absolutely. We all have to have one of those, that's for sure.
Yeah, she's been great.
Don Donoghue, thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, this was fun, Mark, and I really appreciate it.
I hope you had fun.
Who doesn't enjoy talking about themselves for
Absolutely.
an hour?
Thank you, Don.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
I'd like to thank Don Donoghue for being my guest on A Burlingame It's a Small Town podcast sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. Before I close out and roll credits, I'd like to share with you the story of the diamond hunter that went all over the world searching for diamonds and never discovered any. He died a poor man. When it came time to tear down his home and dig up his backyard, lo and behold, guess what was discovered? Diamonds, lots of diamonds. So the moral of the story is that one can travel throughout the world in search of diamonds, but sometimes it's best to start in your own backyard. And that's the story of my podcast. I have searched for and discovered many diamonds like Don Donoghue right here in my hometown of Burlingame. Thanks to my Minister of Podcasts, Mike Nagler, Executive Producer Shelby Lucchese, Director of Marketing Adrian Kwok Lucchese, video by the great Ray Tyler, and original music by Bray. You can hear more of Bray at bray.com. This podcast was written and directed by Mark at the Mic and was recorded on Wednesday, March 30th, 2025 at the Burlingame Public Library. Lastly, be sure to look for my next episode, as my guest will be retired pastor of the Good Shepherd Lutheran Church, Pete Garrison. So until next time, everyone, see you around Burlingame. It's a small town.